and gentlemen, we are back from summer break. Welcome to What the World Needs Now with hosts Tom Whisinnand and Josh Monroe. We hope that you're able to leave feeling encouraged and ready for another day of changing lives in the field of education as we speak with inspirational teachers from across the nation and world about what keeps their spark lit.
In this episode, we talk with the amazing Laura Thompson, an educational technologist at Delaware Technical and Community College, about the many complex aspects of education and how she puts the puzzle together. Without any further ado, Laura Thompson.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. For those that don't have the privilege of knowing who you are, could you just tell us a little bit about who you are, where are you from, and what's your current role in education?
So when you say who I am, is that a philosophical question or?
I think it's however you take it.
Okay.
We can go deep.
What'd you say?
I said we can get deep.
Okay. Well, who am I? My name's Laura Thompson, and I'm a longtime educator, over 20 years of experience in grades K through 12. And also as an adjunct in secondary and post-secondary settings as well. And I've had the great opportunity to teach in a few different places. I grew up in Michigan. I had the opportunity for my first teaching job in Houston, Texas. And then I came out to Delaware and I taught here. And in Houston, I taught a self-contained classroom. It was a special education classroom for students with emotional disturbances, and it was 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade simultaneously. When I moved to Delaware, I taught high school. I was the high school English teacher, yes, in a special education school. The students had been removed from their home settings for usually some kind of behavioral reasons, but there was almost always some kind of other disability that was underlying, and we worked through those things to help them be successful. And then I left to get my master's in New York City, and then I came back and worked at a nonprofit to save the world, and then realized if I really wanted to work to save education, I needed to be back involved with schools. And I was really fortunate. I was able to be a professional development specialist. And I had that role for over 9 years. And that was really exciting role to be able to build those workshops for teachers and to really help them hone their practice. And then the funding changed for that position. And I became an educational diagnostician. And that is basically here. You supervise, you coordinate the special education meetings in a setting. So I was at the middle school for that. And then I decided that I missed the classroom, so a new school was opening and I applied to be a 3rd grade teacher there. And I was really happy to be able to get that 3rd grade position, had a great time with them. And then I moved into, after 4 years, I moved into the position of reading specialist, special education, technology teacher, garden coordinator, morning announcements coordinator, and a few other little things. And then finally at the end, I was an online kindergarten teacher in addition to those things, and also managed our asynchronous online education program. And then I had a great opportunity to return to professional development, and I'm an educational technologist at Delaware Technical Community College. And I've only just been there a few months, though.
That's incredible. That's a lot. Wow.
That is.
If anybody knows education inside out, Laura, you might be it.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So what made you choose to get into education in the first place? I'm always curious, right? You've done so much, but like, what got you into it?
Well, if I go way back, it was actually my grandmother, playing school with my grandmother and really having so much fun in that kind of environment, and really, I don't know, and she always played the bad student and things like that, like the student who didn't want to learn. So I'd have to convince her, oh, it's fun, things like that. So it was really kind of an interesting thing. But really, when I went to college to be a teacher, the thing that really drove me was finding those puzzles. And that's probably why I also am a reading specialist, right? Because there are those puzzles to figure out, how do you help this person learn? And I say person too, because my students have been all different ages. So it's really even up into adults. I even was an adjunct faculty at University of Delaware too. And you're trying to figure out, what is it? How can I present this information in a way that's palatable, in a way that's memorable, in a way that really clicks for somebody and draws on their prior knowledge, so they actually have a place to put this information. So they have somewhere to connect it to something else that they know to help them grow and help them improve, or help them have another way to approach the problem. And I just really enjoy that puzzle so much, figuring out what exactly do we need to do in order to learn the most. So really, if I combine kind of that joy in the beginning of trying to figure out how do I get my grandma to actually want to be a student who wants to learn, and then I apply that in real life, I think it kind of starts with that whole just joy of figuring it out and figuring people out. And that's probably why I'm studying psychology now too, to tell you the truth. But
well, has there ever been a time for you where that inspiration starts to dwindle a little bit? You've had your hands in a lot of different pots over the years. I have no idea what some of those roles are that you were talking about, but I have to imagine that maybe you connected with some more than others. Or has there ever been a time when that inspiration is just starting to go down a little?
Yeah, about mid-October every year. I'm just kidding. And then by March you say, oh my gosh, I don't have enough time to teach them everything I want to teach them. Time is going so quickly, right? But you're right. I mean, are there positions that resonate with you, and really stay with you? I mean, even thinking about, trying to think seriously, there are times, I mean, like I said, I wanted to save the world, right? When I worked at the nonprofit, but I forgot to tell you, the nonprofit was a reading program that we went in and I helped write curricular materials and went in and helped tutor students so they could learn to read. So, I mean, it was still educationally based, right? But I think that if I've lost any kind of times when I've lost kind of that inspiration, I don't know. I'm someone, I like to have that challenge, that puzzle I told you about. And I suppose if I ever felt like, there's no puzzle left, that's when the inspiration would leave. But I'm pretty fortunate because there's always something that needs work, someone who needs help, some place that I can try to make a difference. So technically, has the inspiration ever left? No. Has it changed for me? I think so. But I like to think that you can make your own inspiration, so you can always find that something that's going to drive you.
I love that because you know what drives you, and so you're constantly being inspired. I think that's where that you've found your place.
Right.
I think you're absolutely right too. To always be looking to find what it is that will drive you, that makes you. I love that you're so into solving puzzles and figuring things out. And I think that we as educators would do well to figure out what makes our students tick, to figure out what, like you said, where they're at, and then grow from there, find out that bit of background knowledge and make it connect with them. What books, Laura? I personally am looking for books to read now. We're back in school, some professional books that maybe you've really connected with, or anything like that. What advice do you have for educators?
Well, for me, especially in the role I'm in, one thing that I've really liked is small teaching. I'm trying to remember the entire title, but it's about being able to teach online, but not to be able to look at it as such a huge project, be able to look at it in small pieces Again, kind of solving that puzzle, right? This is my theme. But you look at it in the little pieces, the things that you can do well, those small changes that you can make. Been really, I had learned a lot about universal design for learning before, but I've kind of reignited that passion again recently, and really looking at even those kind of +1 opportunities. And sometimes, and they're not the big changes that you make. It's sometimes just, again, adding in, okay, I'm going to make sure that I add in video announcements to my class now, so that my students actually get to see my face, they get to interact with me. Or maybe you're going to add in an extra 5 minutes at the beginning or the end of your Zoom session, just so that you can talk with your kids and they can have that opportunity to connect with each other or to connect with you. And I say kids, but it's because I'm getting older. So that's like everybody who's under 40, right? But anyway, but you try to take those opportunities. Or, I mean, I know people went kind of Bitmoji crazy for a while, but sometimes I think, inserting a little Bitmoji here or there, or some kind of cute little interaction, those are all those nonverbal communication efforts, right? Where we can use color, or we can use graphics, or we can use some imagery as well. I have a lot of focus in online education, but even when you're face-to-face, even when you're in person, it's getting those opportunities to really know each other. And last year we were doing a book study about anti-racism too. And I think that's another book that is an important one to help you not only learn, you have to be open-minded, but to really learn more about you, learn about others in the world. And if you really think about it as a study of human nature too, then you can learn a lot about interactions between people. So as far as books and things like that, there's a whole lot of things that I read online also lately. I've been reading a lot of research kinds of things as well, and research studies have been what I've really been looking into. But I think if you look at some of the work by Patrick Lowenthal, some of the studies that he's completed, that you're going to see with Dunlap or with Nelson, you're going to see some wonderful things there that are a lot about building community. And again, his focus is online, but when you really read those, you can see the applicability to in person as well. So as far as being inspired by some things that you can read, some things that you can, so I've named a couple of things you can hold in your hand, a couple of things that you can see that are digitally, but then I still like Twitter too, for getting a whole lot of ideas, connecting with fellow professionals there, and really see some great opportunities on there as well. So.
Where can we connect with you on Twitter? What is your handle?
How about @TechThompson, @TECH Thompson?
I love listening to you talk about those, because a lot of what you were saying was about building relationships with your students and building a community within our classrooms. And I think that that's what teaching is all about. We're not going to be able to reach them academically if we can't create an environment where they feel safe socially and emotionally as well. So I'm curious, because we were talking a little bit off air and you were telling us one of your favorite stories from teaching that I think everybody needs to hear. But I'm also curious, what are some other ways that you invest in your students? You talked about the 5 minutes before or after, just being there to talk. So if you could talk a little bit about ways that you remind your students that you love them and that your classroom is a safe place.
I have to tell you, I really try to put effort into getting to know my students. Again, whatever age they are, right? But I know an awful lot about Pokemon because I've wanted to be able to have those conversations with them. And if they're bringing something up, then I can say, oh yeah, but I really think that Charizard is better, whatever, and throw something in there. So it's fun to be able to learn what they're into. Doesn't mean, it's just so you're kind of respecting the things that they're interested in, and you're building that respect with each other, right? I don't know, I'll tell you this, I don't know if you're going to keep it or not, but I'm going to tell you. So I was just thinking about this actually recently. that even to the point, even small little courtesies that you pay to each other, right? To invest in each other. That I would have a student, for instance, and maybe his fly was down. But I would tell him, kind of whisper it to him, your fly's down, so he could fix it and take care of it. And I'll be darned, there were, I had to do that a couple times in my classroom. And when the one day that my fly's down, the kid comes up to me quietly, hey, just want to let you know your fly's down. And to me, that's a huge victory, because they could have laughed it up. They could have said all kinds of things, but they were so respectful, and they didn't want me to be embarrassed, because I didn't want them to be embarrassed. I really, really do think it's reciprocal. And so when you take the time to try to get to know the students, and I don't know, when I was learning about teaching students with emotional disturbances, I did have a teacher who says, don't tell them anything about your life. Don't tell them anything about you, nothing personal, blah, 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 blah. And I believed it for a little while. But when I finally decided that sometimes little self-disclosure is good, then you start to build those relationships. You start to trust each other. And there's a real magic to that, to help students believe that you want them to learn, and that you care about them. You have to think, a lot of the students I worked with had not heard positive things at all in their life. They had mostly heard criticisms about how maybe they weren't up to par, they couldn't do things, they didn't do them well even when they tried. And I think that when you take the time to get to know each other, to show that bit of caring, and I'm not saying you have to have I don't want you to be friends either. That's not what I'm saying. There's a balance, and there's a way to care, but still have that respectful relationship with each other. And it's tricky. There's a line, right? And you have to figure out what it is with each student too. But I think working through teaching kindergarten through 12th grade students, a kid at every level, you learn about the different ways that you interact with them, and even with adults. And it's important to let them know that you have a dog, right? That's what I mean when I say the self-disclosure. It's not like this happened when I was 6. It's not like things like that. Right. It's just letting them into your life a little bit, and they can, oh, I have a dog, or oh, I want a dog, or they can start to make those little connections with you. And okay, here's how big of a geek I am. I'll tell you this real quick. I was so excited about the total eclipse, right? So we were having wonderful conversations for the whole year because I knew it was coming. So we were talking about all these celestial bodies, and we were talking about all the things in space, and I would talk to the kids about the blue moon or about the harvest moon. We'd talk about the stars and the constellations. We'd talk about weather systems. We talked about all kinds of things, right? And I would express this passion for it. So at the end of the year, I had this dad. He was great. He came in. The kids all brought in cereal boxes. The total eclipse was coming. It was coming, and they brought in cereal boxes, and this dad came in, and we created these viewers, right? So that you could look, and there's a hole in the cereal box, and then they're indirect viewers, so you look down here so that you don't burn your eyes out when you look at the sun, right? And it was so neat. And then we made Father's Day cards, because you never get Father's Day cards. It's too late in the year. You just don't get it. So we took circles, and it was so much fun. We took chalk on black paper, and we around in circles so you could see the corona, right, that you would see around the eclipse. And we wrote in the middle, Dad, you're cooler than a total eclipse, or something like that, right? And the kids, they had so much fun, and it was so great. And then I actually had parents send me emails with pictures and videos of their children using their eclipse viewers 3 months later when that happened.
That is so awesome.
That means something. You've connected with students. You've connected with their parents. You've connected your community together. So you all have a passion and you care about something together. So that was a really long answer to talk about investing in each other, but I think it's really realizing the human behind us, and how we can have a little bit of that connection and really respect and care about each other. So it was a long answer.
It was a great answer, though. You said a ton of amazing things, and the one that I like probably the most is just those positive talks that you have with kids, especially when we remember that not every kid hears certain things every day. One thing, when my kids leave every day, I fist bump them and I say, "I love your face." And sometimes people have said, why do you tell your kids that you love them? But when we remember that not every kid hears that, and they need to know that I'm an adult in their life that really does want them to succeed. We remember why we say certain things to kids, and it's not a weird "I love you," but it's that teacher love. It's finding that balance with kids. So I loved that. I loved everything you said, but that really stuck with me.
Gosh, that stuck with me too. I mean, as educators, we're supposed to model the behaviors that we expect to see in society. And our Linda Davis talked about inheriting society. And so are we preparing our students to be those great members of a community like you were investing in? Or are we not? And I think making those little connections with them add up. It's the whole idea of little by little, and then suddenly, right? We invest in them little by little, and then suddenly they're these amazing adults and community members. So I really connected with that thought too. That's just fantastic. There's a lot going on in education, Laura, like just tons. And we were always wondering, what are some of the big issues that you see facing educators today?
Well, I mean, it's really interesting to me how the pendulum seems to swing. And I mean, I know when I was younger, teachers were, I don't know, they almost had power, right? And then the pendulum swings all of the way to the other side, where we're questioning everything and not recognizing the beauty of the relationship, of what can happen to be educated and have that opportunity. And the pendulum swings from teachers being able to create those opportunities that are specialized to the cohort of students, to the standardization that this is cookie cutter and this is the way it has to be and you can't vary from it at all. And I think that it kind of also boils down to, and we don't know really what it's going to look like moving into this year. We still have maybe a little bit of uncertainty, or how, for instance, if we're in school or if we're out of school again, I like to hope we're a little better prepared now in case we need to go back online. But I think in anything, I think the most challenging aspect for teachers right now, with all of that given in the background that they have to think about, is really developing the structure in your classroom, being thoughtful about how you want the lessons to go, in person, online, whatever the modality, right? Being really thoughtful, intentional about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, really thinking about the experience of the student. How will my ELL students react to this lesson? How will my students who maybe have a lower reading level react to this lesson? How can I challenge my students who really need to be pushed further? How do I present it in a way that's cohesive for everyone, but that I can reach people who are, all of my students, and help them all learn? So here's my structure, right? I've got this idea, I've got this ladder, I've got this tree, whatever structure you like to see. And then you also have to be flexible so that you can be responsive to student needs. And again, whatever modality you run into, because we're going to see some uncertainty, that we'll have some students who, again, won't be able to come to school, or for whatever reasons, or maybe none of us will be in school and we'll all be back online, and we'll face the issues that we had with connectivity before, and with equipment issues, things like that. So you have to have your structure, you have to have your roadmap, you have to know where you're going and what your stops are going to be along the way. I mean, that's how I plan a cross-country trip, right? Okay, about how far can I make it in 8 hours? Or about how far can I make it? Will there be a campground there? Will there be a hotel room there? And then while I'm driving, I go, that looks pretty cool over there. And then I might have to deviate from my plan. because it's a teachable moment, or because I have to make sure I can balance in my hybrid class, or because now I have to shift everything to online and make sure that all of my information can still be displayed in a valuable way. So I think that for me, it's kind of that uncertainty is a big issue for instructors right now. And really, again, having your plan, but then having the flexibility to vary from it as you need to. But you can't vary from something that you don't already have a plan.
Yeah.
You need your recipe, and then you can vary from the recipe a little bit and make it your own. But you can't do anything if you don't have that intentional plan to begin with. But what students have said, for instance, college students, about their online learning, the instructors that they appreciated the most during the pandemic were the ones who were responsive to their needs, understood and had that little bit of flexibility, for instance, in a deadline, for instance, in a mode of presentation. So trying to develop that plan, but still have that flexibility. And it's very difficult to be that kind of a person who has both of those sides done well. And I think that is a huge challenge for instructors right now.
Yeah.
I want to keep going down this road of listening to your advice, because we have so many teachers that listen, from veteran teachers to student teachers to kids in college looking to enter the field of education. So I'd like to hear more about some advice you have for teachers and best practices and ways to grow, because that flexibility that you're talking about, that's something I struggled with in my first years of teaching. Was, here's the pacing guide. I'm sorry, guys, I'm supposed to be on lesson 5 right now. I know you don't know it, but this is where we have to be. And I hated that feeling when you get done and you know you didn't do what's best for your kids. And so I want to hear some more, because that flexibility piece is really what helped keep me in education. If I wouldn't have changed that, I don't think I'd still be here. So what other great pieces of advice do you have for us?
Well, again, I think you can tell I'm all about the relationships as well. And I think that what helps us in education, or in anything that we do, really, to tell you the truth, it's being able to build those relationships. And we're talking a lot about students in your classroom, but also often instructors become islands and they end up feeling like they're all alone. And that might have been what you were feeling too, Josh, on your pacing guide. This is what I have to do, and this is where I have to go, and this is where the class needs to be, and feeling like you were alone in your struggle to meet the pacing guide. So being able to have those relationships with other teachers so that you have a conversation with someone else and say, yeah, the pacing guide is really struggle for me too, and then you start to understand. And I say that, though, I want to make sure that it doesn't turn into commiseration, because I think our conversations can't just be about what the problems are. Our communication has to be problem solving. So if it's this pacing guide is really kicking me, then it's being able to talk to a colleague. Okay, where do you think I can go a little faster? How can I tell when my students can go faster than this in this part? And then where do I have to spend a little more time? And sometimes it's a teacher who's maybe taught the curriculum a couple more years than you have. So they have that experience. Maybe it's talking to your instructional coach if you have one of those. Maybe it's talking to an administrator who understands what you teach, which I know sometimes it's hard to find, but sometimes that can be helpful as well. But I think that too often it's really easy to complain. And I don't know if I've presented this well or not, but I'm pretty positive, and I try to find the positive. Don't get me wrong. There are times that I just go, oh, what am I doing? How do I fix this? What do I do? But I try really, really hard. I work at it to try to be solutions minded. And I don't like to tell anyone a problem that I see without having at least an idea. And it might not even be a great idea, I mean, but if I start having a conversation with other people and 4 or 5 of us have a solutions-minded conversation, we're probably going to come up with something pretty good between the 4 or 5 of us. So the thing is, I think it's making sure you're not afraid that if you show a chink in your wall, that you have this little gap in your wall where you are not perfect. Because I think as educators, sometimes we're fed that we need to be perfect too. You know, we need to have all the answers and we need to know how to do it all. And if you ask for help, you might get a bad review, you know, or something like that. So I'd like to speak to administrators too, to tell you the truth and say, you know, administrators have to be able to let teachers be a little bit of risk takers, maybe try something new to be able to reach this cohort of students that I know this might work, and understand that it might take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 implementations of that particular strategy. For instance, I mean, try to think back to the first time, and I know you've done it, but try to think back to the first time you did cooperative learning, right? With students who had no idea what you were talking about. And I'm talking to teachers of every age here, because it does depend on what your students have done before they got to you, right? And if you are it doesn't matter if you're with first graders, so they've just never done it before, or if you're with high school students, if no one's really trusted them before to be able to do collaborative learning, you have to teach them how and help them understand. And I'll tell you the reason I'm focusing on collaborative learning, for instance, is because that's a life skill. That's something you need for your job. That's something you need to get along with your partner in life. I mean, you need to know how to collaborate with someone. So that's why I chose that one. But I think that we try to build people to think that they have to be perfect on their own. And I think as teachers, as educators, we have to recognize that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out. And we as educators have to be okay with people asking us for help too. And we can't judge them. We can't be judgy. Even when we're old and we've taught for 20 years and they ask a question we've heard before, we can't be judgy. And we have to have that patience to be able to help this person work through what the issue is, because they'll be afraid to ask anybody if we don't, right? So I am all about the relationship part and how do we really work together. And I guess one other thing to be able to keep you educating, right, is finding that part that you love about education. And for me, I found out what I really, really love is being able to reach hundreds of people. And by me providing professional development, I reach hundreds, thousands a year, right? And that really, really moves me and makes me happy. Some people, I remember giving advice to some new teachers before, math. They don't want to teach math, couldn't stand math. I'm picking on math because that's usually the one that, you know. But so I talked to them about finding some part of it that they really liked, they really enjoyed, to help them get through the parts that they didn't. So they could look forward to, oh, it's coming, you know, oh, this lesson's coming, or finding a way, you know, PEMDAS, have you heard of PEMDAS before?
Yeah.
Right? Finding the song, the video that goes with PEMDAS, just because, okay, I like it, and then the kids are all singing it and stuff like that, and you see them taking their tests and singing it to themselves and whatnot, and to me, that makes me smile. Yay, I gave somebody, you know, a strategy they could do. But I guess, again, I bring it back to, I guess, being kind to yourself and being kind to each other, so that we can reach out to each other and we can ask for help and know that it's okay. And we also know to give back and offer that help back once we're in a position to be able to do that. Yeah. So I guess those two things.
I really connect with that piece of being vulnerable. What you said, Josh, is so true. As a first year practitioner or year 5 practitioner, we shut that door and it is the students and I, and it's up to me to solve all the problems. It's up to me to figure out all the answers. And man, I hope that we can learn to be vulnerable and ask for help. And maybe some of the teacher burnout that we see, if we get away from teachers need to be perfect and accept help and give ourselves a little grace, like you said, Laura, I think that would go a long way, you know?
And I like the part too about like it's okay to complain about something, but you can't live in that.
Right.
Jen McNally, who we've had on, she does some awesome work here in Nebraska and the regions around with helping teachers with self-care and learning how to take care of ourselves. But she put out the other day, if you've got time to tweet about it or put it online, you've got time to start coming up with some solutions. And I think sometimes that's what we forget. We get down into that dip and we feel okay venting about it, but that venting then turns into some dark times. How do we start to climb that hill and rekindle that inspiration? How do we keep solving those puzzles?
Right.
Laura, thank you so much. We always ask one last question at the end of every interview. And you can go anywhere you want with this. But in the 60s, there was a song, and it told us what the world needs now was love. But what do you think the world needs now, Laura?
Well, peace, love, and understanding, right? I think I really was trying to think about this a lot because I think grace, I really do. You said the word grace. I think about grace for each other, grace for ourselves. I think about honesty where you open up and you recognize where your strengths lie, where you need to work, and that's okay. But I think really we need some positivity. And I don't mean toxic positivity. I don't mean that you smile and say, everything's okay. Everything's okay. That's not what I'm saying, because sometimes that's not okay. And you're working through some things, but what helps you you were talking about, Josh, you mentioned dark times, right? And what helps you is recognizing even the most minuscule times that are little glimmers of light that might seem really insignificant at the time, but when they're cumulative, they can light up a room, right? So we want to remember to find those little things. So it might be that moment when you get your morning coffee in the morning before everything starts, and it's just the idea of that first sip of the coffee and what that's like for you, right? Maybe it's that shared smile with a friend. You're sitting there, you're talking to each other, you have just that happy moment, and you just remember the way you felt when your friend smiled at you. Maybe it's looking at that late summer flower and it's got that bee and it's just laden with pollen, and it's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful, peaceful thing to think about. Maybe it's when that student says thank you with their eyes to you, not even verbally, but you can tell that what you did just made a difference to them. And they're probably going to hang on to that for a while. It might even be, talking on a podcast about inspiration, right? Maybe that's a highlight. Or it could be your 16-year-old going to a movie with you just because. And that's a thing to hang on to right there. I think you have to remember the good and look for it and find the good. I honestly, truly believe that we get what we look for. And if you try to find the good, you will find it. And again, not in a toxic way, not pretending everything's good, but looking for those good parts. Science backs it up. If you have more positivity, you will see more positive things in the world. So when you ask me, what does the world need? I think between grace and honesty, it really is the opportunity to see the good things and to remember those good things, to hang on to them, to have a folder in your email that says accolades because someone said good job and you can review it later. Those are, I think that's what we really need to help us get out of the dark times, or to help us deal with those dark times, because sometimes they're there. But knowing that we have that opportunity to kind of give ourselves a little bit of light, I think can really do a lot of good for us.
I love that answer. Thank you for sharing it. And I think we got to be intentional with that too. Like, just as you're sharing those, I'm sitting there thinking, you mentioned the coffee. And so I just started thinking about my morning. but just finding those little moments and like realizing in that moment, man, I'm really happy right here when I get to sit with my wife in the morning before our 3 kids wake up and just hang out for a second. Or I'm really happy on the way home from work when my kindergartner is telling me all this cool stuff that his teacher did. Like being intentional about realizing this is an awesome moment. I need to hold on to it.
Yeah, Laura, I love the idea about you get what you look for. And sometimes I feel like a talent scout in my classroom because I'm looking for these like you said, little flashes of genius, or what is this kid really, really good at, and how can I use that to promote, his self-esteem. But you find what you look for. I love it. Laura, thank you so much for helping us put this puzzle of education together just a little bit more, just to wrap it all up, But thank you. This is really, really awesome. I love connecting with educators. So thank you for giving your time.
Yes, thank you, Laura.
Thank you very much for this chance.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Thanks for tuning in this week. We're so thankful and appreciative that you took your time to listen to our guest, Laura Thompson. Hopefully you're ready for another week of changing lives, and hopefully what the world needs now is helping you to sustain your inspiration as you get ready or have already entered a new year. If it is, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps us to continue to get inspirational educator stories out.
We hope that as you head out, you remember that the biggest factor that plays into student success is you. Your love, your passion, your empathy, your dedication is exactly what the world needs now. Thank you for everything you do. Have a good one.